Coming to you from an undisclosed location somewhere deep in the heart of the Santa Monica Mountains, I am your intrepid host, L.A. Marzulli. Special presentations, interviews with Mondo Gonzales here in the studio. Mondo, great to have you here, sir.
Here,
and we're going to be talking about Mondo's new book, On the Red Heifer. I think you'll find this interesting. But first, a word from our trusted sponsor. Chances are you've been here before. The chaos in the markets, oil and stocks. Just when you thought it was safe and interest rates were rising, new threats come out of nowhere. Tensions are boiling from Asia to Europe. Adaptation is the key here to safeguarding your wealth. You may have not considered gold before, but folks, it's not speculation, it's insurance. And right now, I think all of us need as much insurance as we possibly can get. Noble Gold Investments have been protecting investors from disaster for years with precious metals. If you're worried, it might be time to take a fresh look at gold and silver. Gold is a proven safe haven shield for your portfolio and a volatility balance against uncertainty. If it helps, Noble Gold Investments is offering a free 3-ounce silver American Virtue coin with its new IRAs this month. If you open up your gold investment IRA or 401k rollover, you can claim your coin today. Remember, crisis brews, portfolios waver, gold insulates. Folks, we've done it. Gold is hitting some record highs, at least it was last week. We'll see what it continues to do. Go to noblegoldinvestments.com. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. noblegoldinvestments.com. We've invested, and it's the only gold company I trust. Once again, noblegoldinvestments.com. So, Mondo, thanks for coming. You've been sort of a house guest, you and your lovely wife, Angela, and we've been eating really well.
Doing good.
Probably a little too well, and we went to the beach yesterday, which was just incredible. In December, sometimes it's the best beach month to go to, but I digress. But you've got a brand new book, and it's on the Red Heifer. Why? My first question is, why would you choose such, to many people, an arcane subject? I mean, let me kind of lead into that. This is something which was stopped in AD 70, as far as I know, with the Romans coming in, destroying the temple, which fulfilled prophecy, by the way. And there hasn't been another one. But we know that they're going to rebuild the temple. So I'll just leave it at that and turn you loose.
Well, I think that's the key, is that we all been learning prophecy for a long time in the sense of a third temple rebuilt. Well, what I saw last year was in September of 2022, September 15th, the whole world, especially the Christian world, all of us, prophecy watchers, we see 5 red cows get brought to Israel. Very expensive, $100,000 each, plus another $250,000 of travel expenses to get them there.
Gee.
And so what it brought about at the time was people who are watching going, well, okay, I've heard about the cows, I've heard about a red heifer for a long time, but now they're actually coming to Israel? Why? What should we, as a Christian, I thought Jesus was the final answer. And so when I saw that happen, I realized, I want to write a book about this because my undergrad is in Jewish studies, so I'm familiar with the Talmud and the rabbinic traditions and stuff. And I thought I want to just provide a framework for the average Christian to understand and to think through prophetically what the red heifers mean as it relates to the third temple, but then also as a Christian, what should we think about this? Should we support this? Should we give money to it?
Right.
And so that was really my angle in writing the book. And also whether there's a whole bunch of dates, we'll get into some dates, but whether it happens or it in the future or it happened or in the past, I wrote the book to be an explanation that will be, kind of the definitive book on, hey, remember when they did the red heifers 5 years ago? What did that mean? Well, here, I talk about it. And so I give the complete biblical, the rabbinic, the traditions, so that the average Christian can grasp it.
Let me ask you this. And a lot of people that aren't schooled in the Old Testament theology and the whole sacrificial system, which was basically replaced with Jesus. We don't, and Paul talks about that we don't need the blood of bulls and cows and all this other stuff because of the blood of a lamb, the blood of Jesus. But tell us briefly, when the temple was there, what did they use the red heifer for? And describe that whole ceremony.
So the red heifer is in the book of Numbers, chapter 19. So it's was originally given by the Lord, to Moses, and God was very kind, because in the Old Testament world, we were very much involved with the temple, what they call cultic, not occult, but the cultic ceremonies. And so we get introduced, we don't think about this way, but for a Jewish person, they have this idea of clean and unclean. You see this as it relates to food. And
even today.
11. Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
So for them, clean and unclean, we don't operate there. We're just forgiven or not forgiven, because we're not going to a physical location. And so with the Jews, they're going to a physical location in the temple area. And of course, you had to be circumcised, number one. You couldn't go in there. But you also had to be clean or unclean. And so this is why even in the first century, you had a lot of washings and
ritual baths.
Mikvah, yeah,
Right.
the mikvah oath, So, but under the Old Testament system, God is like, hey, look, if I'm there and my dad dies, well, then the next day's Passover, but I'm in the room and he dies. Well, now
You're unclean.
I'm unclean.
Yeah, you can't
so I
come.
can't participate. Well,
Right.
God's like, okay, and plus it could be expensive. I got to go offer something, a sacrifice. So God's like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. You're gonna take a red heifer that's pure, in its third year. You're gonna burn it. You're going to take this is the priest. You're going to take the ashes of that animal, and you're going to mix it with water. So then the average person, I can go to the priest, and he could sprinkle me. And all of a sudden, boom, now I'm ritually clean again. So very inexpensive way, very efficient way, versus me having to go out and pay for an animal. So now I get sprinkled by the priest, and I can go offer my offerings now. So again, God was very kind to do that. So that's the origination of the ceremony. And according to the Talmud, which is the Jewish rabbinic writings, roughly 580, they wrote them down. They list out there were 9 heifers that had been slaughtered from the time of Moses until the first century.
Wow.
So in that whole entire 1,400 years, 1,500 years,
Only
roughly,
9.
Only 9.
Let me ask you this. We know as Christians, as born-again, dispensational, believing Christians, we believe in the literal rebuilding of a temple. So we know a lot of people out there, and we're not trying to disparage anyone, don't hold to that position, which is fine. But we believe in the literal rebuilding of a temple in Jerusalem. What are they going to use, if providing, of course, that one of these 5 heifers are ritualistically clean? So tell us first, if they get one that works, what are they going to use that for? But also tell us just the protocols of the killing of the animal and what the animal has to look like before he qualifies. Qualifies.
Yeah, so there's biblical qualifications, and then there's the rabbinic qualifications. This is one of the reasons why, again, I wrote the book, was to say, well, in Numbers 19, it has to be a heifer, which is not a bull, which is a female. It's got to be a heifer and not an igla, which is a calf. It has to be a cow, a parah. And so that's
certain age too,
yeah,
right?
so that's the thing. And so all it says is in Numbers is that bring a cow, not a calf. So that doesn't tell us anything and how old. But the rabbis in their writings now, they're like, well, okay, it could be in its third year all the way up to 5. So all that being said, you have those requirements. Well, today what they've done is they've decided it has to be 2 years and 1 month.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So they have it very specific. And
Right.
so the birthdays of these 5 that were there were in October of 2021. So right now, here we are in early December, and they just 2 weeks ago became qualified. This is interesting.
This is huge.
And I'm not a dramatic sensationalist guy. That's
right.
just not the way I am. But the first time in 1900 years, we have 5 red cows that are qualified. Now, I will tell you this, that one of them has been basically disqualified, because I'm still in contact with...
Because of the hair or what?
Because of... he didn't tell me why, a guy in Israel. He didn't tell me why, but he said no, because according to the rabbis, if you have two non-red hairs,
That's it.
in a single follicle. You can have, it can be at other parts of the thing, but if you have coming out of a single follicle, it's disqualified. So we do know that as of right now, they're all of age, but 4 of them are still fully qualified. And he just told me last week that they're all being moved, all of them, all 5 of them, being moved to Shiloh, which there's a visitor center that they just built.
Wow.
And so they're there. People aren't going to be able to go touch them because, again, the requirements are that they're unblemished. So you don't need, if you were thinking about sabotage, you wouldn't need to kill the animal. You just go up there with a razor blade and go like that.
And that's it, done.
And yeah, it would be a little scar, but it's now it's blemished. So the rabbis have all these extra rules that they've come up with, which is just typical. But the key is that who's building the temple or who's working on this? Well, the rabbis are. So if you just had us doing it, we would follow the Bible. But they're going to follow the rabbinic writings.
The Talmud.
The Talmud and the Mishnah, all these other things. So that's why it gets pretty crazy. And so that's what I tried to explain in the book was, hey, some of you don't have access to the Mishnah. Here I quoted it all for you.
So let's cut to the chase. So all we need is one. So they ritualistically slaughter it. They take the ashes. Now what?
So that's good because people are asking, well, hey, how can they do this without the temple? Well, this isn't technically an offering. An offering happens on the altar on the Temple Mount. And actually, this is very specific. In the Mishnah, which again was written about 200 AD, this is Matthew 15 where Jesus is talking about the elders. Remember the elders, why don't you wash your hands, a cup, and the tradition of the elders. That's the Mishnah. So it was just written down. Well, in there it says very clear that they offer the red heifer on the Mount of Olives, not on the temple.
So they can do that right now?
They can do it right now.
Wow.
And they have 2 pieces of property that they have purchased for this exact reason. I've been there. Actually, when we were in Israel in March, I took our group there. So they would go over and they would burn the animal on the Mount of Olives and then take the ashes, mix them with water, and then be able to, when they got permission to go on the Temple Mount, they could go cleanse it now. Wow. That's the key. That's why the red heifer needs to happen first, because it allows them to purify any of the priests, and they have other things that they've done.
So without, what I find really interesting is like, why now?
Why now?
Why now? And it's, the prophetic implications of that can be mind-blowing, staggering, because if they get one and they sacrifice it ritualistically on the Mount of Olives, now, as you just said, they can sprinkle it. So now it's a step towards the rebuilding of a temple, and we believe in the literal interpretation of the biblical narrative, which basically states there's going to be a third temple on the Temple Mount, regardless of what, some people say that'll never happen. That thing is 40 acres. And I've been there. I've walked it. There's plenty of room for a third temple without destroying the Dome of the Rock. Your thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. There's when you go there, clearly the plans that they have plans to build it maybe just to the north of the Dome of the Rock. They have plans to build it where the Dome of the Rock is. We don't know exactly how the political things are going to happen. But again, when we look at Scripture and we see Jesus talks about it in Matthew 24:15 about the abomination standing in the holy place.
That's literal.
That's literal. Paul in 2 Thessalonians 2, the temple of God, that's literal. Daniel 9:27 talks about the sacrifices being taken away. Well, that's literal in the middle of the week. And then John in Revelation 11 talks about measuring the courtyard. That's very literal. So we have all these things that are there that show us. So as we look at this for 20, 30 years or longer, we go, well, if the temple is going to be built, then we would expect prophetically a red heifer to come to be.
It's got to happen at some point.
And here we are. Here we are. For the first time in 1900 years.
Right.
That's the amazing thing.
It's really incredible.
About it. Yeah. We're living in tremendous times.
But how do we get the book? Tell us.
The best way I would say is prophecywatchers.com. I do have it on Amazon, but why support Jeff Bezos if we don't need to? But prophecywatchers.com in our bookstore there. Again, it's not very expensive.
Great. Thanks so much, Mondo. Folks, check that out if you're at all interested in, and I'm going to get a copy of the book too, which I don't have yet, but I will get one. And check that out because it's I think the prophetic implications of where we are just incredible. And if you're a student of Bible prophecy, this just dovetails right into it.
One last thing, because with all the things that are going on with Hamas, it comes into play because, again, I just got an email from the guy that's on the ground there, and he said, we feel that we're in the moment. They've been talking about doing the ceremony in the Passover of 2024, which is roughly April. So here we're just a few months out. And when I had interviewed him, I said, what's your guys' plan? I mean, I said, I'm just curious because if you go out there and you say, hey, everybody, we want to invite everybody to the red heifer slaughter. Well, where the Mount of Olives is right next. It's basically in Palestinian territory,
Right.
because Silwan is right there on the southern flanks
Right.
of the Mount of Olives. I mean, the idea you'd be inviting Arab trouble, especially because the Arabs know that it's connected with the Temple Mount, which of course they're very sensitive about. So my gut feeling is that there's going to be an announcement. Hey, everybody, we want to let you know that last week
Right,
we
exactly.
burned it,
Yeah.
and now here's the video.
They might get there at 1 o'clock in the morning and just do it. Nobody knows.
Yep.
But here's the video.
Here's
Right.
the video, yeah. But to
Exactly.
invite everybody, because he said, well, I'll be watching it from Bethlehem, but at security, it's almost impossible to try to prevent. I mean, that would be a huge provocation, even more, to the West Bank Palestinians.
Folks, prophecywatchers.com, prophecywatchers.com. Order the book today. And we'll be back tomorrow with another little sit down with our good friend Mondo Gonzales. So join us again. Mondo, thanks for coming on the record. Really appreciate it. Go check out our Christmas store, lamarzulli.net, lamarzulli.net. And thanks so much for your patronage, and Merry Christmas, one and all.